Jimmy Lai, a key instigator of the anti-China riots in Hong Kong, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. On December the 15th last year, the founder of the now-defunct Apple Daily was convicted on one account of conspiracy to publish seditious materials and on 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with external forces to endanger national security. The Hong Kong SAR government welcomed the verdict, saying the conviction demonstrates that righteousness is upheld by the law and that the law never allows anyone, regardless of profession or background, to harm their country and compatriots under the guise of human rights, democracy and freedom. Some Western politicians and media, however, have portrayed the case as a symbol of declining press freedom or freedom of expression in Hong Kong. Was the 20-year sentence appropriate? How did the court arrive at this sentence, and what does the case signal going forward? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Lyu Xiang. I'm pleased to be joined from Hong Kong Special Administrative Region by Edward Lehman, co-founder and chairman of LehmanBush Hong Kong, an advisory body to provide investment, strategic planning and advisory organization specialized in cross-border merchant banking, trade and finance. Also from Hong Kong by Nixie Lam, member of the city's Legislative Council, and here in the studio by Lyu Xiang, research fellow at the Chinese Institute of Hong Kong. Welcome to all of you. So a very quick timeline to start with of Jimmy Lai's case. In August 2020, Jimmy Lai was arrested under Hong Kong's national security law. In December 2023, the trial officially began. In June 2004, the prosecution concluded its presentation of evidence, and in July 2024, the court ruled that all charges were substantiated. From November 2024 to March 2025, Jimmy Lai gave testimony. In August 2025, closing arguments were delivered, and in December 2025, Lai was found guilty on 2 charges of conspiring to collude with external forces to harm national security and 1 charge of conspiracy to publish seditious materials. Hence, the sentencing, which was delivered just 1.5 hours ago. So first of all, let me go to Edward in Hong Kong. How do you look at the 20-year sentencing? Was it appropriate?
Well, the 20-year sentencing was based on the law itself, which is the 2 laws you just had mentioned, and you went through a litany of how we got to how the judges got to where they are and how they got to the sentencing. So we've got a 151-day trial. We've got 2,200 pieces of information that were submitted. We've got 161 different kinds of publications that were made. And so let's take a look at the law itself. I mean, one is this idea of conspiracy. So conspiracy is something that is not so much found in mainland law, but it's found in common law. Mm-hmm. And for example, the conspiracy, the most famous case was the one that initiated what's May Day, which is the Haymarket Square case from my home state of Illinois, which is where I studied law. And it was where folks who had published in a German newspaper, they had published some call to have people come down to the Haymarket Square. There was some killing that occurred there of police people. It was not the people who had published that. And then those people were subsequently found guilty. And so that was a conspiracy that they colluded together to write this, and they colluded together to write this article. And so this is a conspiracy situation here where Jimmy Lai was found to be the head or the one who organized these seditious materials, had published them, and there were 6 other people that were part of this. And some of those people had given witness statements against Jimmy Lai as well. So the evidence was kind of overwhelming. Does it meet the standard of the law? The answer is yes. The Seditious Act, by the way, the second law you mentioned, is actually one that was put into place by the colonial government. It carries a different kind of a sentence. But to go back to the sentencing today, it was considered to be grave, not minor, and as a result, that was why the sentence came out as it was. Now, folks can take a look-see at it, and the alternative would be something like would be a life sentence. So this is less than that. I mean, one could say he's 78 years old, so this is different. And there are also different kinds of redress that Jimmy Lai has available in his legal team. He's got a legal team in Hong Kong. He's got a legal team abroad. He's a British national, a British subject, so he's got plenty of availability, and there was a decent opportunity to do it. So that's the ruling of today, and that's kind of a summary of what's happened.
Nixie, what do you think of the 20-year in prison sentencing? Do you think it is appropriate? Do you think it's an overkill? Or do you think it's too lenient, as some people on the mainland would think?
I think from a emotional point of view, I think a lot of the Hong Kong people would think it's too minor of a punishment for what he has convicted and what he has harmed Hong Kong. But basically, if you look at the current 20 years imprisonment for him, he was basically the mastermind and the driving force behind all the conspiracies. His role and his planning and his collusion with foreign powers and everything is basically very clearly made. He didn't really shy away from all that. He basically made it very publicly and showed that he is the representative of all those foreign countries. So I think basically the court drew a very clear line on peaceful expressions, journalism, and political dissent remain protected. But what crossed the line was a conspiracy to collude with external forces. If you look at all the informations, basically, even you can easily find online.
Yeah.
He for multiple times. He's been spoken publicly in a lot of the forums and in a lot of the media interviews that he wished all those foreign countries can sanction Hong Kong, sanction China on whatever he called freedom of speech, freedom of movement, or whatever. So I think all those evidence are very clear. As we mentioned earlier, 156 days of all these trials was opened, and there's a lot of exhibits, 2,220 of exhibits and 80,000 pages of documentations. And basically everything is very fair and very clear. And I think, well, emotionally, 20 years is not enough for sure for Hong Kong people.
So Nixie is talking about the opinion of a lot of Hong Kong people thinking it's too minor. Internationally, however, you hear on the international media outlets that it's probably too severe. Mr. Lyu Xiang, what is your understanding? Why exactly did the High Court give out this particular number? They could have gone to life imprisonment or something less, but they decided to give him 20 years in prison. What's the consideration behind that?
Okay. Actually, now we know that there are two laws governing the issues of national security in Hong Kong. Firstly is the law of the People's Republic of China for safeguarding the national security of Hong Kong. And based on that, Hong Kong legislature passed a law called Safeguarding National Security Ordinance. So now the two counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign force are based on these two laws. And according to Article 29 and 30, the minimal, the sentence for penalty for those who are the core of the crime, of taking the crime, the sentence will be 10 years to life, to a life in prison. So I think Jimmy Lai deserves a for life sentence, but considering that, first, he's old enough now, he's about 80 years old, and second, he's not a typical violent criminal. So for these two considerations, 20 years is appropriate for him. This is my reasoning. I'm not a judge, but I'm reasoning the judge is considering the case in this logic.
Okay, you're going to see a lot of Western reports on this, and they all start with the phrase pro-democracy. Edward, how do you look at that? As if, you know, your political view should have a role to play in terms of the conviction and sentencing of the kind of crimes you commit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's misguided, actually, and I think it's myopic, probably at best. And let me put it this way: that every law, every government, every country has its own laws, policies, and regulations. The laws, policies, and regulations. Can I remind folks? I mean, it's one country, two systems. We've got a British legal system, essentially, which was inherited. We've got under the national security law, which was just mentioned. I mean, it was from 1997 under the Basic Law. There was an act to to institute the national security law locally in Hong Kong. That was first brought up in 2003. It wasn't nothing happened for many years till 2020, and then the central government said, "Hey, listen, we better get this thing done," and it was passed to follow the national security law of the People's Republic of China, or mainland China, essentially. And Macau, just to give some comparison, they actually voted to have their own national security law, which was different from the mainland national security law. Hong Kong just simply couldn't get it together. So my message to the media is that take a look at all of the facts, take a look at the historical circumstances that brought us to where we are today. And for those of us who remember, certainly the kind of the different kind of demonstrations and the violent acts and kind of destruction of property and businesses that occurred during what was incited here. In the United States, we have something called, there's a lot of discussion about freedom of the First Amendment, freedom of press, freedom of information. The rule is called the Brandenburg versus Ohio rule, which is a 1969 Supreme Court case. If one incites someone to perform acts that would be imminently dangerous and destroy property or people, then that is not considered to be allowed speech. And while it's not necessarily what the lawyers for Jimmy Lai were trying to say is that these are sort of broad advocacy statements. These were not a call to imminence. But if one looks at any of the Western media who's taking a look at this case, does it meet the Brandenburg test? No. Does it? We have something called the Foreign Espionage Act in the United States, which was passed in 1917. That says that one cannot collude with foreign powers. This was during First World War, in order to try to overthrow the government. And there was a fella, Eugene Victor Debs, who was running for president at the time, and he was actually put in prison under that Foreign Espionage Act. Was later pardoned, but. So that in the United States, we had that as well. People who try to advocate the overthrow of the United States of America or other governments, generally there's laws against that. And that's the instance here. Now, I understand the broad brush when people are looking in at a 78-year-old man and they're saying that the situation is unfortunate and regrettable, which I think it is. There were plenty of instances where this could have been avoided, but both sides, whatever happened. And this is the outcome of a case that seems to have been, full and fair and tried evenly. So what Western press says, I think, is mostly misguided, and it's kind of one-sided with regards to what they would like to hear. It's projection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have actually laws against sedition, for instance, in Australia, in Canada. You have, as Edward mentioned, laws in the United States which clearly states the boundary between political speech and, calling for overseas forces to come and attack your country. For instance, in the United States, the U.S. Code 2384 states that if two or more persons conspire to overthrow or oppose the government by force, they may face fines or up to 20 years in prison. Just to tell, and there is no bracket saying whether you believe you are fighting for a just cause or not. Nixie, is the same standard being applied in the case here in Hong Kong? I mean, by the Western media.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. Like, as a lawmaker in Hong Kong, we have to be constantly debating on this double standard sayings from a lot of our foreign politicians. Let's go back to the core reason why we enact the law of any kind. It is basically to prevent such such things by happenings, right? Not only on national security law, we're talking about any law to protect its people and the nation in any way. But in this case, the NSL has been totally absent for more than 20 years due to the propaganda of these opposition puppets in Hong Kong. Basically, Jimmy Lai is the leader of all of them, causing people like him meddling around in Hong Kong for decades already. So let me be very clear. Jimmy Lai didn't start off with a reputable newspaper. He started off with a paparazzi-style magazine, which deliberately follows and revealing famous celebrities' private life for selling figures. See, sells papers on that, not on political, like freedom fighting political agenda or whatever. He's not. It's a paparazzi magazine. And then he smells the opportunity of the political gain and neglect all the best interests of Hong Kong, choose to betray Hong Kong and sell his soul to the ones who helped him to build his media empire around all this political agenda, getting the dollar signs in his pocket by portraying him as the so-called freedom fighters. I think a lot of them on media in the foreign country or even the politician, they know very well who he is really. Not a freedom fighter, but he's basically their puppet. If you look at how, during the whole cases, how many of those like first class elected politicians come forward to say or protect him and all that? Do you see anything like that about Edward Snowden? Nor on the Julian Assange cases at all. They didn't say anything. So this is basically a choice. They turned temporarily blind on seeing things like that.
Why do you think, Nixie, now that you mentioned, why do you think nobody in the West came out to plead for Edward Snowden, for instance, but they're coming out and, protesting against the Jimmy Lai case? What's behind this?
Yeah, as I mentioned, basically, he is their puppet by playing all of their own agenda. He went to the White House, talked to the politician, snap a photo, come back, and then say, well, this is what we need to do. We need to bring sanctions to Hong Kong. We need to bring sanctions to China. We need to do all these things to destroy Hong Kong as Hong Kong it is. I mean, by the people living in Hong Kong, as I mentioned earlier, why an ordinary Hong Kong people would think 20 years of sentence is not enough for Jimmy Lai. It's basically we see all this happen lively in front of ourselves, including what has been happening during the Occupy Central, during all that, and also the all the rioting happening. Is really difficult for Hong Kong people to imagine that we can flip the international city in just like that. All those colluding materials are very vividly, publicly published. He's not ashamed of it. He's very proud of it. I think.
So yeah, you brought up a very tricky point, and I'm going to go to Mr. Lyu Xiang for his understanding of this. One thing is that he's very outspoken about his political views, and he really openly advocates for punishment of China, which he does not deny sovereignty over Hong Kong. He says he does not advocate Hong Kong independence, but on the other hand, Hong Kong is part of China, but on the other hand, he openly asks for foreign governments and politicians to act, to punish China, to sanction China, even to nuke China and finish us in a minute. How can a public figure, especially media guru, send such public messages and expecting that they are not going to harm the interests of his compatriots?
Actually, we know that Jimmy Lai has a very long black history against China, against the sovereignty and national security of China. But we know that the national security law for Hong Kong was enacted on the 30th June 2020. And before that, Jimmy Lai had done a lot of things against China, but the law is non-retroactive. So actually, today the judges didn't make the verdict based on what he did before the law, but his long-time, non-standing behavior, his even we can see behavior pattern. We can see a pattern of behavior of Mr. Jimmy Lai.
What is the pattern? What is
the pattern is everything in China is evil. The Communist Party is evil. So the political system of China should be abolished. This is his pattern of behavior. And although the law is non-retroactive, but it can take his past as a background, as something explaining his current crimes. So actually we can see there is a very strong, very clear consistency before his past and current crimes.
One thing which I do not understand is that after the enactment of the Chinese national security law for Hong Kong, which took effect on the 30th of June 2020, he did not seem to have changed his pattern. He continued to carry out the pattern in Mr. Liu's term. Edward, was the sentencing based on what he did in the past or what he did after the national security law was enacted? And how do you explain the conviction of the High Court that he also broke a British-era law, the Crimes Ordinance of Hong Kong? How does it work altogether?
Yeah, I mean, the judge is taking into account the totality of what's occurred. Now, obviously, no one can be tried and convicted of a law that doesn't exist at the time. So the actions that went into play and that affected before the national security law was put into place is not supposed to be considered. I mean, and to be fair,
but there he was also judged against. He was also judged against the British colonial era law, which was enacted in the 1970s, called the Crimes Ordinance. There he was charged for conspiracy on all 3 counts. What is the story there? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. No, I certainly. And the under that law, the penalty is lower. I mean, it's not necessarily a life imprisonment, and so I think that the judge panel came up with a way in which this sentence could be handed out in light of the idea that the national security law did not go into play at that time. And so again, this is where people who are not participating in necessarily the riots that occurred in Hong Kong, but they're colluding together. I mean, they're conspiring together to make these acts. And let's make something very clear so that the media understands. I mean, the United Kingdom is not going to come back and reinstitute their laws. They're not. This is mainland. This is China. I'm sorry, the People's Republic of China, and it has to follow the laws, policies, and regulations of that. Even though that was enacted, we have a one country, two systems that was adapted under that, and it's just another example of this is a gift or something that was inherited from the British legal system that has allowed Jimmy Lai to be given a sentence as it is today. Like I said, conspiracy is always a difficult thing in civil law courts. I mean, common law courts, which is where people are speaking and they conspire together, and then another act happens. Clarence Darrow, who was a famous lawyer in the early part of the 20th century, said that that's a very, very tough standard to hold people to.
Why did the British enact that law, though? Why did the British leave it so vague?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, but they did that in the 1966 or 70s and whatever, specifically to try to crack down on the mainland government at that time, which was doing stuff within the territory at the time to be able to try folks that were conspiring to overthrow the colonial rule. So it's ironic that this law specifically, which was set up to try to not have the mainland government be interfering with the colonial government, is the one that Jimmy Lai is sentenced under and on. And so, I mean, even if we take a look at, again, freedom of speech, is it allowed in the United Kingdom? I would say no. I would say you look at Tommy Robinson, you look at cases where is freedom of press able to be done in the United Kingdom? I would say that's up for a very big debate. So, or in some instances in the United States. So I think that a lot of times people don't understand that, like you were saying, to drill down on specifics of the laws and what conspiracy is and the reason why these laws were put into place. They cut both ways, good, bad, or indifferent. And, the judges, not us, but the judges who had 156 days and looked at all this material, they came up with a response, which they have to defend, by the way. I mean, meaning that there can be, there can be further actions to ask for a reduction. There was a mitigation, by the way, which was left out. There was a mitigation hearing that was held over a number of days to say why the sentence should be what the sentence is. So initially he was convicted, of course, and then later the mitigation had come out, and that's why they came up with 20 years. Whether it's too long, too short, whatever the case may be, it is a lawful determination of the rules as they were set forth. I mean, he had plenty of access to legal counsel. The UK Prime Minister had come and everything else. So.
Nixie, we don't have much time left. Once again, help us understand your understanding of where should one draw the line between freedom of expression and breaking the law?
Well, I think basically ordinary people in Hong Kong, it doesn't really matter. We still see a lot of people commenting on a lot of the policy we enact in Hong Kong, and they're not happy about it. They express that online, they express it on Facebook or whatever. It's totally okay. Even though they do interview on the streets with a lot of media, that is totally fine. But if you colluded with the foreign forces, accepting advice or even accepting money from them, that will be very clear, isn't it? And especially in this case for Jimmy Lai, basically a lot of people clearly knows what he has been doing all these years, just that we don't have any law to basically put him in jail in the old days. So.
All right. Mr. Lyu, is it about what Jimmy Lai said, what the newspaper carried, or what he actually conspired to do in secret and in public?
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, is it a law? Is the sentencing about what Jimmy Lai said all these years, or what he did these years?
Yeah, I understand. Actually,
1 minute, please.
Okay, actually, what you speak sometimes is what you act. Speaking is something of action. Yeah, we don't actually in law we can never separate speech from action. If you make your speech to incite something, you are in the danger of committing some kind of crime. I want to say lastly that Hong Kong's legal system is part of the common law system, and in common law system, people just need to take note of common sense. By recognizing the common sense, you will be aware the red line between the free speech and the kind of speech which is inciting unrest and other crimes.
Okay, I suggest that people find the verdict, which is unfortunately 860 pages, over 860 pages long, but all the details are in there. And I took a look at that document, a lot of details. If you have questions, you can certainly find some answers there. Many thanks. Unfortunately, we have to leave it. Many thanks to Edward Lehman, to Nixie Lam, and to Lyu Xiang for your very professional insights on this matter. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Lyu Xiang. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Lyu Xiang in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. You've got the point.